He's always just there.
attacking when like defending.
I think it's like
People deluded, I'm back again.
Come on, Ian. Man. Come on, Ian. Thank you very much for that. I can take it from here. People deluded. I'm back again. Thank you very much for tuning back in each and every time. As usual, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and of course, good night where appropriate, according to where you lot are in this world and what time zone you're operating on, and also the time of watching the vid. Do me a favor, smash the like button. Make sure you're subscribing if you haven't. Turn on your notifications. Follow on all the socials and make sure those creative juices are flowing in relation to everything we're going to cover. We're going to go over some other Arsenal bits and pieces. Ivan Toney to Arsenal seems to be hotting up. It seems like it's a three-horse race between Chelsea, Spurs, and saving the best till last Arsenal Football Club. The Romanos, the Ornsteins, all of these guys have offered stuff. So let's go through everything, man. Allegedly, is this working? Here we go. Arsenal are ready to step up their interest in signing Ivan Toney in January to solve their striker problems, with Brentford willing to sell the forward for 60 million when he returns. Now, for me, we've scored 80 odd goals last season, so we have the capabilities. That being said, you know, Odegaard's learning to score goals, and you know, he's probably not creating as much as he could in that regards in terms of the metrics. Martinelli had a good season last year. You hope he can do that again. Saka's obviously shown for the last 2 years he can score goals, but with them, and actually Jesus, if he gets 20 league goals, it wouldn't surprise me if these players do it. It wouldn't surprise me if they don't, because we are quite volatile. We're shifting the goals around, but it is quite volatile. I don't think we necessarily have confirmed goal scorers. Ivan Toney got 20 odd league goals. That takes us from an 80 goal a season team based off last season to 100. That turns some defeats into victories, some defeats into draws, and ultimately more points on the board. And that helps us stronger in our quest for qualifying for the Champions League again and aspiring to pit Manchester City to the Premier League summit, really and truly. So I'm all for it. But I have said it before, and again, check out the videos I've done. I'm sure by the time you lot are watching this, a video came out earlier. I do think we need a striker who has different strengths to Eddie and Nketiah and Jesus. I think we need the best of both worlds in that. Them lot can do their thing. We've got false nines of Havertz, Trossard, Martinelli, and whatever. The wide men keep scoring, midfielders chip in and do better than they did last season. But I also think we potentially need someone different. When you look at how Ivan Toney plays, his heat map, and all of those sort of things there, people, he is very much a Mikel Arteta system striker. He doesn't just stay and occupy the centre half. He can do that. He can work the channels. He's got an element of playmaking. So I think a new striker would also help. But when you look at the metrics, you know, one problem of Mikel Arteta has been at Arsenal for all the goals we've scored is chance conversion, which ties into buying a striker, but also chance creation, which is probably a problem of ours this season as well. So as much as it's about signing a striker, you need to provide the striker with service. And arguably, we're not creating enough chances collectively for our attackers. So I don't necessarily feel signing a striker, whether that's Toney, whether that's Osimhen, whether that's Ferguson, whether that's, you know, Vlahovic or whoever really and truly solves all of the issues. But it would help. And obviously it gives us the scope to cross the ball sometimes, be a bit more direct, because it's not really a criticism because I like it, but sometimes it feels like our attacking play is a bit too perfect, it's a bit too scripted, it's not random enough, and we don't go direct enough. Because I know we're improving physically, you know, we have got some tall players introduced into the club, but collectively that's not our kind of style. Nonetheless, Arsenal are ready to step up their interest in Brentford striker Ivan Toney. According to reports, the Gunners are believed to be looking to sign a forward in the January transfer window to keep their hopes of pushing for the title alive, with both Jesus and Eddie Nketiah struggling in front of goal in recent times. And I also feel that, you know, obviously Mikel Arteta knows the players at his disposal and the players know, but I do think sometimes a strength of a team is playing to somebody's strengths. You look at Eddie Nketiah, you know, he had 8 touches against Everton, similar sort of ineffectiveness against Spurs. We all know he's a striker that you need to kind of give him the ball and give him service. You look at the game against United, where I think he had 40 odd touches. He was a lot more of a live wire. So I think we simply need to be laying it on a plate for our players, because although Eddie Nketiah and Jesus, I wouldn't describe them as clinical, it feels definitely this season that as Arsenal fans, we're able to remember the 3-4 clear chances that we've had in the game. And obviously the players need to find their shooting boots and score. But also, I don't want to remember it. I want us to create 20, 30 chances a game, really. And, you know, in the law of averages, that should work out, really. They had twice led in the well, you know what? Let's not get into that Spurs stuff. According to the Mirror, Brentford are willing to part ways with the forward, but want 60 million for his services if he is to leave in the January transfer window. I'm not too sure on his level of fitness. I know he's returned, but when you look at Osimhen, you probably need to bid 100 odd million to even begin dialogue with Napoli, something around that sort of region for Brighton with Ferguson. And Vlahovic, I don't know for the Chelsea for the Chelsea links or if Juventus want to let him go. Ivan Toney's changed agents. He's got 18 months on his deal. Thomas Frank has previously spoken about anyone could be available for the right price. So it seems like he's got one foot out of the door. Obviously, we've done business for David Raya, so maybe dialogue has been had over Ivan Toney, or there leaves scope for it to happen, people. Nonetheless, moving on, we know Toney's had a ban from last May. He hasn't participated in the season so far. We know he's been called up to the England squad. So we'll have to see, really and truly. I do think we need a 20 league goal a season striker, whether that's Ivan Toney, whether Jesus, who's too good in my opinion not to get that. Don't know why he's not able to do that. Or we wake up one day and that's Eddie Nketiah. I think we do need that because, simply put, sometimes we could be playing crap, but our striker clinical, we get away with it, really. You know, to a degree. I won't say we was poor against United, but our clinicalness made the difference. And that also was a lot of scope last season. And maybe against Spurs, you know, it's very easy to say this. You know, there were individual mistakes. Collectively, we could have done better. But had Jesus and Eddie bagged, you know, Jesus' chance was more clear cut. We might have won the game 4-2. We talk about this, but ultimately we've got 3 points. We keep it moving, really and truly. And sometimes, especially when you do what we want to do, get to the latter stages of tournaments, you know, that crunch time period next year, the end of the season, you just need to put the ball in the back of net. Arguably, that's the toughest thing to do. You know, as much as I like what we're doing this season, the points we've got, and, you know, I don't think it's been amazing, but it hasn't been terrible. Ultimately, football's decided by how efficient and effective you are in both boxes, how we defend and how we score. Defensively, we've improved, but we're still prone to moments of madness, and not just defenders. You look at Jorginho with that mistake. Havertz has lost the ball in the transition. Saka did that against Fulham, and there's been plenty of times mistakes happen. And also, we're not exactly clinical. At this moment in time, if certain players don't have their shooting boots on, you could argue Bukayo Saka forcing the error with the own goal for Romero, and obviously bagging the penalty, which came via a set piece. Seems like we've become set piece FC. We're not quite going to get the change. And again, I think we need to do a bit more in chance creation, because we've got some players at this football club that people would die for. I'm not saying they're the bee's knees and all this thing, but Martinelli, Saka, Odegaard, Trossard, you know, any put Smith Rowe off the bench, Fabio Vieira's coming to the mix now, you know. These sort of things, you know, this shouldn't be an issue of ours, really. I don't think our players are the most clinical. I think Odegaard's kind of finding his goal scoring boots, but I do think it's not harmed him creativity wise, but he's kind of lacking for someone of his ability in terms of his creativity. Although him and Saka forced the issue, as I said, for the first goal against Spurs. Jesus could be a lot more clinical. Kai Havertz. So we'll have to see. Moving on from that, once again, Chelsea and Arsenal are considering a January move for Ivan Toney. Brentford are ready to sell in the winter transfer window when he has completed his 8th month ban for breaching betting rules. Apologies. Arsenal are weighing up whether to bolster their front line. Brentford will seek 80 million, says this report, for Toney, who will be in the final 18 months of his contract in January. He was the 3rd highest scorer in the Prem last season, behind Harry Kane and Haaland. You're doing all right if you're behind them. And, you know, I think they're both better than him, but at Manchester City and Spurs, they're creating a lot more chances in that regard. So it's almost a striker's dream. Not saying Brentford don't play good football, because they do, but Ivan Toney could cook a lot more. He's 27, turning 28. As I said, he's got 18 months on his contract, and he has joined a new agency, and he's on the Stellar Group, which have worked with Mason Mount, Jack Grealish, and players of that ilk, people. Thomas Frank, I've said this in several videos, but has said, for those of you listening for the first time, don't forget to let me know your thoughts. Hit the like button and subscribe. I think every club in the world is a selling club except 5 or 6. We're a selling club if the price is there. It's the right time. If it's the right time, for the player to go, if they've developed well enough with us, been on the journey, and now they've proven good enough to go to the top clubs, then I think it's the right thing if it's the right price. So we'll have to see, really and truly. You'd imagine, I won't say we don't need a striker, but it feels like Chelsea are more in dire need. And it seems like, you know, although Chelsea's a mess at the moment, it still is an attractive club. It's a team that's won major honours not too long ago. You've got Pochettino, and I know they've got Broya, they've got Jackson, they've got Nkunku to come back, but it seems like you can just slot in there. The same goes for Spurs. They've coped with the departure so far of Harry Kane very well. But you look at how they lined up against us, people. You know, you had Son, Brendan Johnson there. They're kind of alternating. You know, Richarlison probably is the more kind of conventional striker, but he's not exactly good. he could, and Spurs are under Postecoglou look like they're doing stuff that could be attractive to Ivan Toney, who could also stay in London, which I'm sure he's settled, having been at Brentford for a number of years. Arsenal, I don't necessarily, with the greatest of respect, Eddie Nketiah to a degree has kept Jesus out of the team, or Jesus has even had to play out wide because Eddie Nketiah, like against Spurs, we know there's injuries. But for Ivan Toney, it's you or Jesus, really. Do you back yourself against Jesus? I think he will. So I have to see. A player that Arsenal fans would also like in terms of Victor Osimhen, Chelsea are also allegedly admirers, people. For what it's worth, Ivan Toney said, I think everyone wants to play at the top of the tree. I feel like playing for a big club, fighting for trophies and these kind of things. Everyone wants to do that. So, yeah, man, you'd imagine he could get that. John Cross of the Daily Mirror has said, Mikel Arteta wants a proven goal scorer to his squad and wants to add a physical presence to his attack. Ivan Toney fits the bill. Arsenal are long-term admirers and might have to push to sign. I might have pushed to sign him in the summer had he not been banned. That was a follow-up tweet for which Arsenal are stepping up their interest in Ivan Toney ahead of the January window. Brentford willing to sell the player, but will demand at least 60 million. It remains to be seen whether Nketiah could even be put into the deal. I mean, that could knock some bread off it. And Eddie Nketiah, you could join a great club in Brentford. I would actually hold on to Eddie Nketiah unless the price is right. I think Ivan Toney and Jesus are the top dons. There might be games for Eddie to come off the bench and he's a hero and all these things. And as we've seen at Arsenal, there's already injuries. When you look at it, Ivan Toney only has 3 non-penalty goals more than Jesus. So I'm not saying I'm not taking Ivan Toney because it means we could be more of an aerial and physical presence. I'm just saying while Jesus has underperformed his goal scoring, what he should be getting at Arsenal since he's joined and probably since he joined the Premier League, I do think the problems are deeper than just necessarily signing a striker. I have done a video about this. It's to come out at 7 p.m. UK time. So whatever time you're checking this out after this video, go and look at that. And also, tell me you hit the like button and let me know your thoughts. Once again, everybody is saying the same things. People, ESPN are reporting that Arsenal and Chelsea are interested in him. For what it's worth, Ivan Toney once said, the next club I go to if I were to move, it would be the right club. I've been a Liverpool fan my whole life, but from young, I've liked Arsenal. I've liked watching Arsenal and how they play and how passionate their fans are. I'm a Liverpool boy at heart. So apparently sources have told ESPN that Toney recently changed agents with a view to the next chapter of his career. Once again, they're looking at 80 million. They'll do business for around 60. No negotiations have taken place yet. And apparently Toney is concentrating on rebuilding his fitness, people, after being allowed to train with Brentford again. Arsenal are believed to be weighing up their attacking options. And Toney, who scored 21 goals in 35 appearances for Brentford last season, is one of the forwards they admire. With the striker market, there isn't, to us common football fans, there isn't a whole leap of like household names, really. We could sit here and say Vlahovic, there's Ivan Toney, there's Vlahovic, there's Ferguson. Arsenal have previously been linked with Ollie Watkins and Dominic Calvert-Lewin and people of that ilk. Every 18 months, there seems to be a next striker on the scene. You've seen it with Kolo Muani, Boniface over there at Leverkusen, Ramesh Højlund's gone to United. We have to... I'm on taking Toney. I like his mentality. I like how he plays in terms of when he scores goals, his mentality, the way he drops deep, works the channels, all of that. Premier League proven, and we've shown we're buying kind of Premier League proven players past the point. Trossard, Havertz, we tried it with Willian. Jorginho's at that here. Declan Rice was brought, and any names I've been missing out, people. But obviously, I think Arsenal will go after Ivan Toney, but there's probably lesser known talents that we're looking at, essentially, really. Romano has said, as for this tweet that got a few Arsenal fans excited, I was just confirming what I shared last week. Arsenal are interested in Ivan Toney deal conditions. Same for Chelsea. There's nothing new yet and nothing will happen now, but these clubs are interested and monitoring the situation. As we saw with Mikel Arteta's approach to signing David Raya when he already had Aaron Ramsdale, I think we're evolving into a modern football with rotations, changes. It's not a scandal to have one more important player. So I'm sure Arsenal are making that kind of improvement as they want to be competitive on all fronts. That's their idea. But then it's too early to say if Toney could be part of this plan or not. As I've also said, Chelsea are also interested, and we know they're struggling for goals at the moment. So let's see if they'll decide to go for Toney or a different kind of player. And as we've seen, if the deal don't make sense, rightly or wrongly, Arsenal under Mikel Arteta and Edu for the last couple of years now shown they'll walk away. I wonder if Chelsea will force the boat out in relation to Ivan Toney that much more. And I guess it comes down to Ivan Toney's willingness to pick Arsenal. For what it's worth, David Ornstein's weighed in and he said, Ivan Toney will be a really interesting one. We can't talk about that Balogun contract situation without saying the same about Ivan Toney. He's contracted until 2025 at Brentford. He'll be back in action in January. That's a year and a half before the end of his terms. So Brentford will be needing to make a decision on him. Could they tie him down to a new deal? in the same sort of way they did with David Raya. There have been reports that they're ready to offer him a massive contract to extract the maximum value from a player who still might be sold, thinking they can get a higher price for him, which makes sense from the club's point of view. But if Ivan Toney is dead set on leaving, you're making it more difficult for you. Look at when Harry Kane signed that last kind of big deal at Spurs, and now he's eventually got his move. But yeah, but if he has to play ball in that, and if we're in January with a year and a half to go, he's not prepared to sign, then there's a very good chance, you presume, I'm not wanting to upset Brentford fans just logically, that he goes. Whether that will be in January or the summer with 12 months left on his contract, it would still attract a really big fee. And I guess for Arsenal, the question would be, do you hold on for the summer where you've got more wiggle room to look at targets and maybe go for someone that may be better than Ivan Toney if some fans want that, or someone that fits the system more? Or do you go for Ivan Toney in January because that seems the right thing at the right moment, and that could be a boost in relation to whatever we're fighting for at the time in January, people? So who knows? Once again, we're going over the same things with that. And when you look at who looks to cross the ball into the box the most frequently, passes per cross among all teams in the Premier League, Liverpool and City, even though you wouldn't necessarily define City as a cross inside, Liverpool to a degree are more so that. But, you know, Liverpool have 67.2, Manchester City have 59.1. You've got Newcastle behind that with 56.9 because of their target men. With the greatest of respect, Sheffield United are a championship side, so they're going to be up there. Arsenal are behind Liverpool, City, Newcastle, Sheffield United, Spurs, Burnley, Man United and Brighton, and we've got 44.5 passes per cross. So if it could give us another dimension and we keep doing what we're doing, not necessarily becoming a cross inside, but we have that in our arsenal, then it makes sense, essentially, in my opinion. Over the past 2 Premier League seasons, Ivan Toney has won 256 aerial duels, second only to Tarkowski in the entire league. So that can also help us. That can help us defensively from set pieces. That can also help us. You look at the game against Liverpool at Anfield last year in the second half, I believe we lost a lot of control. Second half, it was all Liverpool, but we lost a lot of control when we took off Odegaard and Jesus. Trossard can play as a false nine, but you're asking a lot for him to compete with Van Dijk in terms of that probably calls for more of a traditional sort of striker. And Ivan Toney can help us. Games where, you know, to a degree against Spurs, we're going long, but it's not really to any benefit. Ivan Toney could kind of help. And Raya to Ivan Toney could be cash money in that regards. Ivan Toney can do the traditional play. Also, he could do that sort of stuff. Romano has also said their interest was always there for Emil Smith-Rowe this summer, as he's a talent, but there was never any negotiation despite Chelsea links. At the moment, he's not playing much, but it's too early to say what it means for his future. For January, we have to see what they decide in December, as now the message is clear. Arteta is happy with the current squad and wants to focus on the next months with these players. No panic. Love to see Smith-Rowe get an audition for that, you know, that left centre mid role, or even off the flanks with the injuries and the games coming. Hopefully he gets a start, ironically, against Brentford on Wednesday, in which we'll be doing a watch along. Make sure you've turned on your notifications and you've set your reminders and you smash the like button on that an hour before kickoff. Pedro Neto's a player Arsenal have previously been linked with. Haven't necessarily been linked with him today, but he started the season blisteringly well. He has had a direct hand in each of Wolves' last 5 goals this season. He's got 4 assists and 1 goal, and at Arsenal, I prefer for him to be competition for Saka on the right, but he's shown he can play on the left this season. He's a player I've done a video before. He's a player I've saw at Braga and Lazio and things like that. Happy to see him over his injury. I don't think we get him in January, but he'd give us another dimension. Keeping up the theme with strikers, football transfers. This was the same article that said, you know, we've held talks with Osimhen, we're getting Mbappe and Tchouameni, so take of it with a pinch of salt. But allegedly, Arsenal director Edu in discussions with Ollie Watkins' agent over a January move. Arsenal director Edu has engaged in discussions with agent Paulo Venezia, forgive me for mispronunciations, over a possible move for Ollie Watkins, people. Apparently, the former Gunners player owns the agency 2Touch, which represents the Aston Villa striker, and there remains ongoing efforts to see if a deal can be done, with Chelsea also keen on the England international. And I mean, he gave a perfect audition, because did he not hit the winner for Aston Villa against Chelsea? Both Mikel Arteta and Watkins have publicly acknowledged their mutual admiration for each other in the media, with the player even being a self-proclaimed Arsenal fan. Sources close to the matter suggest that securing Watkins in the January transfer window could prove challenging, but not entirely impossible, as his current side have been attempting to negotiate a new contract with their star player for over a year. We're told Watkins is seeking a 5-year contract with a wage demand of around 150 grand. I don't think you'd get that at Arsenal, but maybe that's where the reports are coming out, because he wants a new contract. Naturally, rumours are happening, or maybe he wants to take the next step in his career. I think Aston Villa are a good forward-thinking club, I think Emery, with his signings, got them playing quite well. A source connected to the club revealed to Football Transfers there are doubts within the club that Ivan Toney would fit into the Arsenal way. Arteta typically favours players with a disciplined and clean-cut image. Arteta has had previous disagreements with Toney and is concerned about his current situation. Obviously, the betting, the way he spoke in that interview on the podcast a few years ago, that video where he's saying F Brentford. Respectfully, Duppy really knows who to frighten, because I don't think he's going to do that at Arsenal. It's the same way with Kylian Mbappe. How he carries on at PSG, you're not going to get away with that at Real Madrid, and you know damn well you won't get away with that. So we'll have to see, really. But we understand that Toney is not entirely ruled out as an option for Arsenal. There is interest, but for now, it remains at the initial stages of consideration, with the winter transfer market not open for some time yet. So again, you can kind of quash those rumors, because, you know, for all the links we've previously read, if there is some admiration, maybe it's over exaggerated, but if there is some sort of level of interest or some sort of openness to sign Ivan Toney, so there might not be any concerns per se over his quote unquote discipline or attitude or these connotations, people. So we'll have to watch carefully, people. It is what it is. I was just reading this myself. I don't want to give clout to Jamie Carragher and all those things. Unfortunately, Kai Havertz is Mr. 007 now. Arsenal will go for top Man United transfer target in January. We've been linked with Rabiot again. I mean, yeah, we've been linked with him again, people, which again, I'm sure a lot of you are tired of these sort of links. He's been linked with Premier League clubs. He seemed close and dead set to be going to Manchester United at one point, people. Pardon me again, that was just me reading in relation to Leno. It seems like making, you know, I think we're keeping the lights on at a lot of news agencies, because they've interviewed several former Arsenal goalkeepers, Leno, Matt Turner. Surprised it's not been Emi Martinez, and everyone's had a big song and dance. We've been linked with Diamande of Sporting Lisbon, and I think when you look at the calendar list and the games coming thick and fast, and definitely on the eve of Brentford wanting to rest players, between Gabriel or Saliba, one of them will probably have to play from the start, or maybe some parts. So there is scope for another centre half. Of course, if Timber was fit, like Tomiyasu, he can play across the back four. So we might be looking at it differently. But Diamande apparently is not pushing for a move to Arsenal or City just yet. That's according to his agent. As you know, he's basically just joined Sporting Lisbon, given a good account of himself over there since joining last year, and had a good game against us when we went out in the Europa League. Apparently, he's extremely satisfied at Sporting. He's very focused on the club and the objectives for this season, which include winning the national title and improving. And he knows that Sporting is the ideal club for his evolution. The player will be happy to sit at the table with Sporting, but so far there is nothing. Sporting is Diamande's present and future. He wants to evolve, but there is nothing regarding renewal. And I mean, you know, naturally, the way he's playing could be set for a contract renewal. A few days ago, we was linked with Aaron Hickey of Brentford, which in theory, provided we signed him and Ivan Toney, that would be 3 players from Brentford. Allegedly, he's content at Brentford, and we were linked with him before he signed for Brentford. When he was I'm sure he was playing in Italy and obviously in Scotland. A source well placed has told Football Insider that the 21-year-old is happy with the Bees, despite the reported interest from elite English clubs. Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, as well as Bayern Munich are reportedly ready to do battle for his signature in January. I mean, to lose Ivan Toney and Aaron Hickey in January, on top of losing your first choice keeper Raya, I'm not sure Brentford would want to do that, people. He started all 6 of Brentford's games this season, and he's moved on to the left-hand side. As you know, he can play both. He's capped 11 times for his country, and he's made 26 appearances across all comps, people, since 2022-23, which was his debut season in the English game, people. So there's no smoke without fire. I think there's an admiration for his talents and his quality, but with that being said, I don't think there's anything else. Yeah, let me know everything you've heard in this video, your relation to Osimhen, Ivan Toney, potentially Watkins, Aaron Hickey, and everything else, people. Let me know any videos or video topics you want me to consider. Check out the rest of the other vids. Make sure you've hit the like button, you subscribed, you dropped a comment, you're checking out the rest of the other videos. But most importantly, stay safe, stay blessed. I appreciate all of you lot for tuning in wherever you lot are. God bless you all. Hope you all continue to have a great day or week. Yeah, man, stay in good health, and we'll link up again.
There's always just that.
I think when defenders,
I think it's like.